Caseus. Clone Wars. Part 2. The Pirates of Valcor. Chapter 1. Caseus gazed out the window of the Star Cruiser at the endless galaxy before him. As much as he missed his home on Coruscant, he never grew tired of the beauty of the vast grandeur of space. As he stood lost in his own mind, R3 rolled up alongside him. They should be arriving soon. Once we're cleared, we can get moving. Commander? Caseus was greeted by a clone who saluted him. Caseus returned the gesture. The General has requested your presence on the bridge. Thank you. I'll be right there. Caseus took one more minute to enjoy the view before walking through the corridors of the ship towards the bridge. Not sure yet. Once the supply ships arrive, we'll know where we're going. Master Takai says these relief missions will help strengthen our relationships with our allies. Yeah, I'm a little homesick too. Let's just try to think of something else. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. What is it? Show off. Upon reaching the bridge, Caseus entered his passcode into the holoprojector and was greeted by the glowing image of Master Takai.
Caseus, have the supply shuttles arrived yet?
Not yet. They should be here within the hour. How's everything on your end?
So far, so good. Our troops are tired, but the Separatist forces are losing ground quickly. I estimate Herdessa will be fully liberated within the week. We've recently been supplied with additional ships and troops, and the Separatists are running on fumes at this point. I suspect they'll cut their losses soon.
Good to hear. I wish I could be there to help.
You have an important job, Caseus. There are Republic allies in need of aid.
So, why do they need a Jedi to deliver the relief supplies?
Because there are people that would like nothing more than to steal it. If the ships are accompanied by a Jedi escort, they'll think twice before trying anything foolish.
I suppose. Still, it feels like I'm being sidelined from the action. You've been on Herdessa almost a month already.
Think of it more like your first solo mission as Commander Urshan. I have to go. When the ships arrive, talk to the lieutenant and find out where you'll be delivering them. It shouldn't be more than a few ships.
Okay. Be careful, Master.
May the Force be with you, Caseus.
The transmission ended as Caseus talked to a few of the troopers and made preparations for the arrival. An hour passed and Caseus received notice that the relief shuttles were landing in the hangar. Upon reaching the hangar, he saw 2 shuttles land, each carrying food, water, and medical supplies. Out of the shuttle walked a few clones with data pads. Trooper.
Commander Urshan, the relief shuttles are ready to be delivered. We just need to refuel here before we make our way down to Valcor Prime.
Valcor Prime? That's not a system I'm familiar with.
Not surprising. The galaxy itself has nearly forgotten it. But the people of Valcor have access to a route through hut space. Even the Seppies don't know about it. All they ask for is supplies to keep their villagers from going hungry.
So how did the Republic find out about it?
Call it a happy accident.
Caseus recognized that voice. Emerging from one of the supply ships was Corbyn. Corbyn?
That's Commander Roth to you.
Oh,
Caseus, I'm kidding.
Corbyn walked over to his friend and hugged him tightly. It's been too long, Corbyn.
Tell me about it.
What are you doing out here anyway?
Long story short, Master Terran and I responded to a distress signal from Valcor Prime a few months back. We stopped a raid from pirates, and after talking to the chief of their people, we learned that Valcor Prime is the only system bordering Hutt territory that has access to a route through Hutt space. The Hutts don't know about it, and neither do the Confederacy from what we can tell. If we can secure assistance, we can transport troops and resources to our divisions across the galaxy far more efficiently.
Okay, but what are you doing here? Corbyn looked a bit uncertain of what to say.
Well, Master Terran and I were already within a parsec of Valcor. When I found out that the 303rd Division was going to oversee this mission, I got him to let me tag along and help oversee the supply run. It took a bit of convincing, but here I am. If it gets me out of the field for a while and I get to see my best friend, I'm all for it.
Caseus smiled. He missed Corbyn. It had been almost a year since the last time he saw him in person. He was certainly changing. His old clean-cut hairstyle was now growing out and looking a fair bit scruffier than it used to be. His jaw was covered in a thick layer of stubble, and dark circles had formed under his once piercing eyes. Still, as run down as he looked, he still carried himself with an overconfident attitude that Caseus both loved and hated.
Commander Urshon, we're approaching Valcor. The ships will be ready in a few minutes. I recommend you make your preparations immediately.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Well, Corbyn, it's great to see you again. We'll talk more on the way.
Sounds good.
Caseus and Corbyn both departed to make their preparations. Sorry, R3. I need you to stay here. The cruiser's maintenance team needs your help fine-tuning the sensor relay. We don't want to get caught off guard again like last time. Whoa, language! Look, this is a simple relief run. We'll be back before you know it. Look, next time it's you and me, okay? I'll personally see to it that you accompany us on our next mission. Okay, I'll throw in an oil bath and a tune-up. Deal? All right. Report to maintenance, Rusty Haggler. R3 rolled off down the corridors as Caseus returned to the bridge and recorded a holo message for Master Takai. Master, this is Caseus. The relief ships have arrived. We're transporting them to Valcor Prime. Corbyn actually showed up as well. He's going to make sure the people of Valcor receive their supplies without issue. Contact me when you get the chance, and I'll report back to the ship as soon as we complete our mission. May the Force be with you. After recording his message, Caseus returned to the hangar, where Corbyn was waiting outside one of the transports. The two Jedi stepped on board the ship and took their seats as the craft flew out of the hangar and down towards Valcor Prime. Corbyn sat, fidgeting with the mechanisms on his arm. Caseus took notice and glanced downward. As much as Corbyn didn't blame him for what happened, Caseus still felt responsible for what happened to his friend. So, what's Valcor like?
The whole planet, at least from what I've seen, is entirely grasslands. The village where we're headed is pretty poor, but they've made do for centuries. Just don't expect any fancy structures or skyscrapers.
Are the people friendly, or...?
Very much so. But they're extremely distrustful of outsiders. That includes Jedi. So, better let me take the lead and speak with the chief since he knows me.
You've settled into the role of commander pretty well, haven't you? Corbyn looked out the window as though he hadn't heard.
Yeah.
You okay?
We'll be arriving in a minute or two. Better get ready.
Caseus nodded and stared out the window as they entered Valcor's atmosphere. The landscape was indeed mostly grasslands, but from the look of the dark clouds in the sky, you'd be surprised that anything grew down there. Soon the twinkling lights of torches and campfires could be seen as the ship landed outside the border of the village. Stepping off the ramp, a cold rush of evening air hit Caseus. He'd been on the cruiser nearly 2 weeks straight. As shocking as the breeze was to his skin, it was refreshing to feel fresh air after so long cooped up in the command center.
Remember, let me take the lead here.
After you. They approached the wooden gate of the village. Caseus was now able to get a good look at the inhabitants. They were tall, slender creatures with cat-like features and intricately woven garments. The women, at least he assumed they were women, had long ears that hung behind the backs of their heads, while the men seemed to have much more humanoid ears that were pierced with gold rings on each side. They all looked at the Jedi with great caution, but their guard was slightly dropped upon seeing the supplies. A very tall Valkorian approached. He held a cane that was nearly as tall as Caseus, and wore a tall headdress that exemplified his already imposing stature.
Chief Caseus, we've come with fresh water and food to aid you and your people in these difficult times. Please accept these gifts as a token of the Republic's goodwill toward Valcor Prime.
Chief Caseus looked at Caseus intently, before turning his gaze to Corbyn and bowing his head in appreciation.
Well met, young Jedi. We thank you for these pleasant tidings, and for the water and food. The gods of the harvest have not been kind to our crops this season. Now my people can eat, and our children can grow strong. Please, join us. My people have prepared a feast.
Thank you, Chief. This is my friend Caseus. He helped to ensure that the relief supplies arrived unharmed.
Chief Caseus stooped down to Caseus' level and gazed intently into the Padawan's eyes. Caseus was uncomfortable, but held his tongue. After what felt like an eternity, Chief Caseus stood up.
Then he is welcome, as are your troops, should they require food. Follow me.
The chief turned and walked towards the large bonfire at the center of the village, as Corbyn and Caseus followed behind. Soon the feast was set, and the supplies were unloaded and placed into tall huts. As Caseus sat patiently, a young Valcor woman came to him holding a brown shawl.
Tualaka, Nikoto Inchumebina.
She placed the shawl around Caseus' neck and placed her hands on his cheeks, placing her forehead against his before rejoining her people. What was that?
The Valkorians hold their crafting of fine garments in very high esteem. They've offered you that shawl as a token of friendship and goodwill.
Caseus felt honored and wrapped the shawl around his head and neck. It was actually quite comfortable with the chilly weather. The chief stood and gave a speech to his people before toasting with a very tall glass of brown liquid and signaling for the music to begin. Food was brought over to them on large flat rocks covered with large leaves. It wasn't much, but it was certainly delicious. Caseus ate and observed as the Valkorians smoked from long wooden pipes and blew puffs of colored smoke into the fire, changing the size and hue of the flames. This was all so fascinating to Caseus. He'd never been so taken with a culture he'd only just discovered. This is wonderful. They're very kind.
They are. And the war has only made life harder for them. But their ability to push through? It's inspiring, frankly.
Caseus looked to the left and saw one of the clones tossing a ball back and forth with a few of the children. When he turned around, Chief Krayu was standing in front of him.
Do you know any stories, young Jedi?
I'm sorry?
In times of celebration, my people tell stories around the fire. It brings us together. Stories are, after all, our greatest treasure in life.
I'm not sure. I'm not much of a storyteller.
That's for sure.
Caseus chucked a pebble at Corbyn and rolled his eyes. I do know one story.
Then please, sit by the fire and enlighten us. I will translate to my people.
Caseus nodded and walked to a small mat by the fireplace.
Break a leg,
called Corbyn, clearly eager to see what Caseus would pull out of the air. Caseus looked at the Valkorians as they gazed intently at him. This is a story of a brave warrior and the woman he loved. Caseus sat for a moment, thinking. A long time ago, before the stars were kindled, there was a young man who had fought many battles. As the years went on, the fighting began to take a toll on his spirit. Just as he was about to give up hope, he met the most fair and beautiful woman he'd ever seen. But he was forbidden to love, as was she. Every day, the young man crept out in secret, hoping to catch even a glimpse of her fiery gaze. One day, he decided to speak to her as she walked through the gardens. They talked for hours. Soon, they began to meet in secret. Their love grew strong, stronger than their commitment to their own kind. Every second they spent in each other's company was bliss, but it was torment as well. For they both knew they would never be together. One day, a terrible foe had laid waste to a distant land. The warrior knew he had to be stopped. Taking with him his finest soldiers, he left his home to stop this dreadful enemy. After a month, they were victorious, and the warrior began his voyage home. But when he arrived, he discovered that in his absence, his village had been besieged by bandits. They had taken everything, leaving nothing but ashes and broken homes. And among the dead, he found the fair maiden. And he never forgave himself. He went into exile. To his dying day, he never stopped loving her, looking forward to the day when they would be reunited. Caseus stared up from the fire, the eyes of the Valkorians glistening in the dark as they gazed at him. There was absolute silence for many minutes, with only the occasional mumble from one of the children, before the chief stood and called to his people in the Valkorian tongue. The music soon resumed, and the chief and the villagers talked amongst themselves of the story they heard. Chief Creyu walked to Caseus and handed him his stone chalice.
Drink. Your story has touched us all.
Caseus smiled and sipped the sweet nectar as Corbyn walked over.
Well, that was,
Caseus scratched the back of his head. Yeah, got a bit depressing there.
Yeah, I'll say. The Valkorians seem to like it, though. Where did you hear that story, anyway?
Caseus thought. I'm not sure. It just came to me.
Well, the feast will be over soon, and we can head back.
Before Caseus could respond, one of the children began to tug at his arm, pulling him over to the fireplace and pointing to one of the glowing embers in the fireplace.
Mikaso, ticabonata.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you want. Without a single word, the young girl grabbed the glowing rock and placed it in Caseus' hand. He nearly dropped it immediately from the shock, but was surprised to find it was barely warm. As Caseus held the stone, the girl handed him a piece of string and pointed to the rock, motioning him to tie the string to it. Caseus did just that, fastening the twine tightly around the rock. The girl then tugged his arm downward, bringing him to one knee before putting the rock around his neck, smiling and speaking her peculiar language.
I see you met Kanata, my youngest daughter.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. What is this?
A totem. Each stone holds the stories and legends told by the fire. My daughter welcomes you as an honorary member of our tribe.
Caseus was confused, but very humbled, bowing to the chief and his daughter. Thank you. I'm honored. I'm afraid we must return to where we belong. You've shown great hospitality, Chief Creyu. Caseus and the chief both bowed to each other before Caseus and Corbyn gathered their gear and their troops and made their way to the shuttle. There was just one problem. Their ship was currently occupied.